If you've ever taken a wine glass of water, moistened your finger and rubbed it around the rim, you might have heard a very pleasing, sonorous, light sound. This is called a glass harp. If you get a couple of them, of different sizes and different amounts of water, and do the same thing, this is called the Angelic organ. And the Angelic organ was invented in 1741 by a little-known Dubliner called Richard Pockrich, and it's his story I want to share with you today. Dublin in the 18th century was a very exciting place to be, in a setting for rapid transformation. At the start of the century, Dublin had a population of 60,000 people, and by the end of the century that had increased to 200,000. The 5 main squares of Dublin were built during this time: Parnell, Mountjoy, Merrion, St Stephen's Green and Fitzwilliam. The Wide Streets Commission widened some streets like Dawson Street and Sackville Street, or what we now call O'Connell Street, and the faces of the River Liffey literally changed. The backs of houses and buildings used to face the River Liffey, but these were literally turned around, and now when we walk down the quays we see the faces of these houses and shops and buildings facing onto the Liffey. And this is where we meet Richard. He was born in 1695 in County Monaghan on his father's estate, and when he was 25 years old his father died, leaving him a large inheritance of what in today's money was about 200,000 to 800,000 pounds. This got Richard very far, to Dublin, and his first business idea was to build a brewery on Island Bridge. This brewery failed. A few years later, when he applied for the Royal Dublin Society's premium for the best barrel of ale and failed, Richard was said to have consoled himself by heroically and courageously drinking his own ale. This was the first of many different ventures and ideas that frittered away Richard's inheritance, such as he had the idea, and he put a lot of money behind the idea, to breed geese in the Wicklow Mountains. He thought that he could supply geese for the whole of Ireland, Britain and France. He couldn't. It didn't work. He tried to run for Parliament twice and failed, both representing Monaghan and Dublin. He wanted to give everyone a pair of wings, and he thought that, you know, in time, when he got the funds, people would as soon ask for their pair of wings from their butler or servant as they would for their shoes. We don't. He wanted to build an observatory for the pursuit of astrology, not astronomy, the movements of the planets and stars, but astrology, like horoscopes. He was an amateur astrologer. He wanted to build boats made out of metal and with metal hulls about 100 years before this actually happened, and he also wanted to fish boats and ships with little boats that would save people's lives in the event of a shipwreck or an accident, perhaps like lifeboats, which also didn't become common policy until after the Titanic sank in 1912, again a long time after Richard lived. His most exciting idea to him was blood transfusions. The idea that you could take an old or sick person and siphon some blood into them from a young and healthy person, such as a kitchen wench or a housemaid, and this would in essence rid us of death, of natural death. They would live for so long. The main problem he saw with this was that estate managers and undertakers and people who managed wills would be really upset at the idea that natural death was effectively ending by way of his blood transfusions. So he decided in this case he would lobby Parliament to sign into law that once a person turned 999 years old, they could be declared legally dead. So the courts could sign over their inheritances to their relatives, and that vicars could get burial fees from their 999-year-old but legally dead parishioners. Again, blood transfusions didn't really become a thing or even become safe until the 20th century. He also wanted to drain the bogs in Ireland and grow vineyards. That didn't work. We don't really have the climate for vineyards. But Richard's most famous and most successful idea and invention was the Angelic organ, which he invented in 1741. The first ever performance of this that we know of was in Hunt's auction rooms on Stafford Street, or what is now known as Wolfe Tone Street. But the first performance of this that we know of was for a group of bailiffs who had rushed Richard's apartment and were going to cart him off to debtor's prison. But he told them to relax and hang on a minute, and he played for them his new organ. He played for them a song called The Black Joke, which is a very popular and bawdy song at the time, and they were so transfixed by this at the end of his performance that they actually let him go and let him be and left his apartments, boding very well for the instrument. He actually also played it in Smock Alley across the river from us here, where it was said to have these glasses were said to have the sweet sound of a nightingale. He toured Ireland with them, and for the first time he had a steady income of about £6 a day playing the organ, along with a boy soprano who followed him everywhere. But when Richard turned 50, he decided it was time to finally marry, and he married a lady called Margaret White. Both believed that the other had money. They were both wrong. Margaret ran up some substantial dressmaking debts, and when Richard couldn't pay them, she decided to run off with an actor called Theophilus Cibber. They tried to sail to Scotland, but unfortunately their ship sank, everyone perishing on board, including Margaret and Theophilus. A couple of years after that, Richard himself unfortunately perished in another accident. He was playing the Angelic organ in London, impressing the well-to-do and launching even copycat versions, such as one from Benjamin Franklin. He was staying in lodgings near the Corn Exchange in London when a fire broke out, and he unfortunately perished. This, of course, is not the end of the Angelic organ. You can find people playing it professionally today, but it's from Dublin that this weird but wonderful instrument originated. I'd like to think that Richard was a genius before his time, but in a splendidly delightful, bonkers way. We're lucky to know a lot about what he created and his ideas, because whenever he thought he had a good idea, he would take out an advertisement in the newspapers about it. A master of self-promotion as well. And I think Dublin is a city, a capital city for dreamers and eccentrics, and Richard. And I think Richard's probably the patron saint to many of us here today.